What's going on, card people? Welcome to the next episode of Behind the Cardboard, uh, where I talk with hobby store owners and operators to learn about what really makes their shops run behind the cardboard. If you don't know me, my name is Chase. I run TCG Bulk Kings. I'm an online only trading card seller through any type of trading cards on many different marketplaces, but I really want to learn more about how the brick and mortar side of things run. That's what this is all about. So I'm joined today by Jason from Total Escape Games. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Jason?
Yeah, hey, how's it going? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the podcast. As you said, I'm Jason. I own Total Escape Games. We're a tabletop game store in Broomfield, Colorado. We carry a little bit of everything. So we do Warhammer, RPGs, board games, collectibles, event space, you name it. But we also do a ton of collectible card games, Magic the Gathering, Riftbound. We do singles for both. And then we do sealed and events for Gundam, Lorcana, Star Wars Unlimited, a bunch of others as well. So we do a little bit of everything. We kind of got our hands in all the different parts of the industry, and we've been doing it for almost 18 years now. So we've got a little bit of experience behind
A
us.
bit, yeah. 18 years is amazing.
I wasn't there for all 18 years, but I've been there for about 10.
Yeah, that's great. I try to start these out usually just to get to know you a little better. How did you get into trading cards to begin with?
My origin story is kind of that, as a kid, I always liked more of that kind of thing. And so, I grew up playing Yu-Gi-Oh, playing Magic, and then went off to college, kind of lost track of all of it, wasn't doing any of that because I was kind of trying to focus on school and thought, I would get distracted. And then, ended up finding League of Legends anyway, so got distracted regardless. But after college, I was kind of reconnecting with some friends. They had gotten back to playing Magic. So that kind of became our hobby that got us all in the same room together again after school. And we were actually playing at Total Escape Games about a decade ago before I worked there. And kind of at that point, I'd become a little disenfranchised with psychology, which is what I went to school for. Worked in a office as an office manager, kind of saw the industry a little bit more from the inside, and felt like, maybe it wasn't quite what I wanted to do. I wasn't going to be able to make the difference I wanted to be able to make. And so at the time, the manager of the store knew that I was kind of in between jobs and was kind of taking my time looking for a good fit. And he offered me a part-time position to start. And at the time, I'd been really deep into Magic. I was traveling to play competitively, and I knew a lot of the people in the community here. And so I essentially got hired, and then we bought a 200,000 card collection. And so for the first 6 months, my job at the store was to sit in the back office and just put in headphones, sort cards for 6 or 7 hours a day, 3 or 4 days a week. And I would get everything sorted by set, get everything alphabetized within there, get it all arranged, and then I would bring it up front, and the rest of the team would kind of get it put away into our card library. And at the time, we probably only had, a little bit under 100,000 cards in the library for sale up front, and so this kind of more than doubled our current inventory at the time. And alongside that, we kind of got more into kind of like buying cards. We increased our cash and credit rates. And we were starting to lean into more Magic themed events, hosting Commander, doing more with Friday Night Magic, modern tournaments, legacy tournaments. At the time, Legacy was really big in Colorado, so we did a lot of that. And it was all kind of unified in our push to get more into collectible card games, which was something that at the time that I was at the store back then was something that we felt we didn't do a really great job at. And so my first role for the first couple of years, even after I finished sorting all of those cards, was growing the Magic inventory, improving sales in that department, kind of getting people to come into the store more to play and to buy. And that was kind of when our collectible card game journey really got started, where we started to take it seriously as a big part of the store. Because before that, I mean, we were running like big national level events for Star Wars X-Wing and games like that, but we were much more miniatures and board game focused and RPG focused than we were card game focused. And so me coming on the team, rebuilding a lot of those systems was kind of when we made that turning point into really building card games into what we did more substantially. And then, I mean, since then the industry's gone crazy and there's a million new card games that didn't exist back then, so much more demand, and so we've kind of just grown into it with the times and expanded ever since.
Awesome. That's really cool. It's really interesting to hear that the story you were in was a lot more focused on other hobby aspects and then leaned into trading cards. A lot of the places I've talked to or know about, it's more like they really are big on Magic or big on Pokemon, and then they've expanded out from those towards other things. So it's really neat. A lot of these older stores, I think maybe it's more like we were really into comics and then got into the other things too. So
Yeah, Steven, the original owner, he had always been much more interested in the miniatures gaming and paint side of things. And so I think for the first few years when he was running it, he really prioritized the games that he personally enjoyed and that he wanted to see succeed. So we did a lot more X-Wing, bolt action, stuff like that. And so when I got hired on, it was kind of because he'd mostly become hands off at that point. The new manager was kind of trying to grow the store, recognized that card games was an area that we were kind of underutilizing and where we were underperforming compared to a lot of other stores in the area. And so he knew me as somebody that had been involved in the card game scene here. And so that's kind of why he brought me on, was to expand that specifically. Because, I mean, when I first started, yeah, we were setting up like 64, 70-person events for X-Wing. We were streaming them. We were hosting some national level tournaments for that. But we really weren't doing a lot in terms of Magic. And so I kind of came on board and was basically telling everybody, all right, we're going to run some games. We're going to increase our buy rates. We're going to get people in the store to buy cards. And like, yeah, we really, that was a pivot that we made probably about halfway into the store's history.
just a quick question: do you remember what the first pack of cards was that you opened, and you remember what was in it?
Like as a kid.
If that's when you first opened a pack. So.
Yeah, I think the first time I ever opened a pack would have been middle school. I had been watching the Yu-Gi-Oh! TV series like in late elementary school, and so I kind of like discovered the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game the first time it ever released. Like I was out with my mom in New York visiting family, and we were in just like a street market, and I remember seeing like the original Yugi and Kaiba starter decks and losing my mind to her as like a 10 or 11-year old. And so that was the first thing I ever bought, was I think the Yugi starter deck for Yu-Gi-Oh! And then in terms of Magic, a couple years later, I kind of transitioned into Magic because a lot of my friends had switched over to that. And so I think the first pack I bought was a Saviors of Kamigawa pack I found at Blockbuster, of all places. Because my dad and I had a routine where kind of when we'd go out to dinner every Saturday night, we get a pizza, we get a movie, and Blockbuster had that little section up front of like card packs. And so usually I just like pick up a Yu-Gi-Oh pack of whatever the newest set was, but I'd started to get into Magic. And I remember I opened a Saviors of Kamigawa pack and I opened Sakashima from it. And I actually still have that original Sakashima that I opened. It's one of the only cards I still have from back then, but I felt like it was a nice kind of like milestone in my life.
I got really into Star Wars like 1994, right before the special editions came out, and a couple years before the special editions came out, I guess. And they came out with a card game in '95, and that was my first introduction to card games. So I had my grandfather was into sports cards before that, so I had some like tangential connection to trading cards at that point, but I got the introductory starter kit, two-player kit for the Star Wars card game. That was it for me. I was into card games ever since then. And then the first Magic pack I opened, I remember really strongly because those are the only Magic cards I had for like 2 years, and it was a pack of Chronicles. I don't know where I got a pack of Chronicles. I don't know how it ended up in my possession, but I opened a Nicol Bolas Elder Dragon Legend in that, the white border one. So still, but with the goofy art on it and everything. So
Yep, I know exactly the one you're talking about.
yeah, so I guess I'm interested in what kind of things that you did specifically to kind of grow that card game presence in the store once you got through that big mountain of collection that you guys had bought. Because I'm sure a whole lot of people would be really interested in that kind of thing, and maybe it was almost 10 years ago, like you said, but it is, some of it I'm sure applies universally. So, what kind of things were you able to do, or you tried that didn't work out so well when you were trying to grow that trading card community in a store that wasn't really originally known for it.
Yeah, so I mean, one thing that definitely worked in our favor was that even though we weren't really known as a card store, we had always had really well attended pre-release events. And so there was definitely a Magic community around us and that knew of us because I mean, that was the first events I ever played in the store. Those are the first memories I have of the store was playing in Scars of Mirrodin back in high school. So we'd been running those like all the way since the beginning, pretty much. Like as soon as we started carrying Magic, we were doing pre-releases. But for a while, that was kind of the only thing that we were running, and so we ended up having like a really good sealed community and casual community of people that would show up for every pre-release weekend, and we'd have tons of people there all weekend, and it was always a ton of fun. But we never really had a lot for them to buy besides, just kind of the current set. And so when I started, the big push was we're doing well on sealed sales during pre-release. We're doing well when the set first comes out on release of like selling booster boxes and packs and that kind of thing. But we didn't really have any staying power in terms of like once the set wasn't the new hot thing after those first couple of weeks, people didn't really come to us as much. We didn't have a lot of singles to sell people. So people weren't playing in our events as much because with the store credit, there was only so much they could buy. They couldn't really turn it into the staples they needed for their decks. And so the first step was that 200,000 card buy, which was just to get some singles into the store so that we actually had more of the cards that people were asking us for. Because my philosophy back then was really just to be able to say yes to people as much as possible. And so our first goal was just, get the card stock so that when people are asking us for cards, we actually have them. And increasing how many boxes of a new set that we're opening so that when people come in on release weekend to buy the singles that they're looking for from the set, we actually have those in stock and they can browse the cases. And we started to get people used to actually checking us for singles as opposed to kind of like picking up their sealed product from us, but then skipping us for the rest of the shopping experience for kind of the other local competitors. And so once we had that in place, the next step was, okay, but we want to make sure we still have plenty of singles even after people buy stuff. And that was when we really increased our cash and store credit rates. We started being a lot more aggressive about wanting to buy cards from people. Before that, we basically weren't buying cards from cash at all. And our store credit rate was something like 40-45% of TCG market. Um, and so I kind of came to the managers at the time was like, hey, these rates, they're not competitive. They're not high enough. No one would trade cards into us versus going to anywhere else in the city. And we have a lot of other stores in the area and always have in the kind of the Denver metro corridor here. Um, and so I kind of like, as I was shopping at the other stores around us, I kind of looked at how they were buying cards and what their rates were so that we could at least make sure that our store credit rate was going to be competitive with that. And that kind of encouraged people to, during pre-release weekend, they open some chase cards, they sell them to us rather than going somewhere else. And just slowly kind of trained people to see us more as a card store and as a place to buy and sell singles, which both helped, getting more people in the door to buy cards and also helped us replenish the stock by having more people come in to sell us cards when they were done with them. And then after that, kind of once we had all of that infrastructure in place, I actually, that was probably a couple of years into working there. And so I ended up actually transitioning into the role as event manager. And when I did that, that was the big push of, okay, let's get things on the calendar every day, whether it's Magic or otherwise. Let's grow our communities. Let's have some more tournaments. Let's get more people in the store and let's give them reasons to stop by besides just shopping. And so that was when we started to run, on a rotating schedule. We would run standard, modern, and legacy on Fridays alongside our drafts, which had always done well. And we started to see more turnout for those because at the time, Friday night was just Friday Night Magic. And so, we'd fill like half the room for draft events, and those had always done really well for us. But then we start to kind of bring in 10, 15, 20 people for Legacy or for Modern. We started hosting a Commander night on Thursdays, which ended up kind of taking over the whole store for that as Commander got more popular. And in kind of doing that, we not only had already kind of built up the stock and the inventory to where we could buy and sell cards more effectively and built better procedures around it. But we also now had kind of entry points where people were coming into the store more frequently. And it was people who, need new staples for their legacy deck as the new set comes out, or are trying to build a new modern deck or a new standard deck. And so for a while, we had a really good turnout where we had like really great legacy tournaments on Fridays, really great modern tournaments on Fridays, good drafts on Fridays, great pre-releases. Then we were running standard on Sundays and Commander on Thursdays. And so at that point, that was probably also when I would say like the drive to get on the Pro Tour was the strongest for a lot of people in the community. And so we became kind of a regular stop for everyone back when there were still GPTs, back when there were still legacy main events at GPs. And so a lot of the Eternal players would come to us because we ran so many of those events. And we kind of became known as the place to play those. And our store showdowns for like our standard showdowns and stuff were really well attended and really competitive. And so people would get tons of store credit because we'd have like 60 people there for it. And so we just kind of got known as the event space for Magic in the same way that we had previously been known to be for games like X-Wing that we were already thriving in. And we were able to kind of keep that same framework where it's like we already knew how to run a good competitive event, to prize it well, to make it a really high quality experience for people. And so we were able to kind of just apply that formula to all the card game events to kind of build those out the same way we already had with other games.
Cool. Yeah. What kind of skills do you feel like were transferable from the miniatures type event over to running a TCG event?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's very similar. Like, there's just certain consistency aspects that people really appreciate in events, like making sure you get registration done efficiently and that people know exactly when and where to register and what it's going to cost, making sure you get those advertisements out so people know that the event's even happening, um, making sure that your registration workflow and getting everybody seated and settled goes really smoothly, that your team's really well trained on it, that you know exactly how to bring people out and get them checked in so that it's kind of a revolving door rather than having to kind of stall out every now and then. Like we got really used to, you know, if somebody's having trouble looking up their DCI number back then or something like that, we'd kind of get them paid, we'd move them over to the side, and then I'd keep registering people at the front counter while the person who's doing the registration for check-in is over here, and they're kind of working more intimately with everybody to get their credentials set up. And that allows us to kind of keep the line moving, getting everybody seated, and that way we can actually start our events on time. People know they can depend on us. And so that's like the main thing is just like being dependable, being predictable, making sure that people know that they're going to get the same quality of experience every time they come in, regardless of whether it's just a Friday Night Magic draft or like a big, you know, RCQ or that type of event. Um, and then a lot of it's just, you know, making sure that the rounds progress smoothly. You know, you're setting the round timers promptly, you're setting the expectation of what the rules are going to be. We do a quick judge announcement at the beginning of any type of competitive event just to introduce the judge, let people know that that's who you should come talk to if you need anything, get everybody familiar with that person, go over any rules that you need to know, tell people when there's a lunch round, if there's going to be a lunch round. Just really set the expectation of exactly what the event's going to look like. And also then making sure that you're very transparent about what the prize structure is going to be like, what the payout system is going to look like. For a casual event, we flatten it a little bit more to where we want to make sure that people feel like they're a part of the event and are rewarded for attending the event kind of across the board. Whereas for a more competitive event, you want to kind of build the prize support more steeply towards the top because then it incentivizes those people who are very competitive, who want first, second, third place, to feel rewarded for actually achieving that level of success in the event. And so we kind of took those same frameworks of just knowing how to break down prizes, how to make it enticing, how to make sure that there's a good enough payout that people actually feel incentivized to come play. And then also making sure it's just a really comfortable experience that's consistent. And that really will get a lot of people coming back if they have a good time the first time and can trust that they're going to continue to have a good time every event they come to.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's yeah. If they have a good experience the first time, they're definitely a lot more willing to try a second time.
Yeah, and especially if they, you know, like won a bunch of store credit and got some cool promos and they're like, oh, this store is awesome. I got all this cool stuff. Of course they're going to come back. And then the last little detail that's kind of like one of the unpleasant things that people don't often talk about in the industry, but I think is really important is you do have to police your community. Like, if you keep getting feedback that there's one or two people in your events that are unpleasant to be around, that people are just not enjoying playing games with, that's something you really do need to do something about because those one or two people that are just dragging the whole event down for everybody else are the reasons that people stop attending your events. And so we've always been very direct in approaching those people and letting them know, you know, hey, like we're getting complaints, you're being really aggressive or hostile, or people are having a really hard time playing against you for X and Y reason. And we would actually sit down with them and talk to them and, give them a chance to correct their behavior and become a little bit more friendly or at least a little bit more neutral. And then if they weren't able to do that, we would actually ask them to stop attending our events, because we really prioritize making sure that everyone's going to have a good experience. And, I think everyone who's played in events at some point has experienced like the one opponent they're just like dreading playing against, or you're just like, oh, he's just, he's angle shooting the rules. I have to watch him really closely because everything's competitive and he's looking for any advantage he could possibly get. And it's like just on the line of what's appropriate in the rules. And it's just like, if you let that kind of environment build up in your store, it really pushes away anybody who's looking to get into events, but isn't of that same competitive, more aggressive mindset.
Yeah, it's always tough when you've got some grinder or something is at a pre-release or something, beating up on 12-year-olds while refusing to let you double check that he tapped his mana correctly or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you want those people to feel
Not
well.
personal experience or anything, but
Yeah, no, exactly. That's my point. Like we've all experienced that somewhere or another. And so a lot of the time you can work with people, like people want to play, they want to be reasonable. And so most of the time we were able to just have some conversations and get it sorted out. But we did it every now and then, there's one player that just, hey, we don't think you're going to be a good fit for the community. Like we really appreciate you coming in all the time. And it's never easy to do, but we need you to stop coming in for events. You can still shop here, you can still do whatever, you're not banned from the store, but like we can't have you in these events because you're driving people away. And that's always a really hard conversation.
all right. So you said earlier you run events for lots of different types of games, but you only stock singles for Magic and Riftbound. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, and Riftbound was pretty recent. Obviously, the game hasn't been out that long.
I guess walk me through that decision. How did you end up deciding? I guess you were just Magic singles before that, right? Not any of the other, larger presence games. But you added in Riftbound. How did that decision get made? How did that process go for you guys?
Yeah, so in the past, we'd always been really hesitant because Pokemon singles can be very dicey. It can be a lot of work. We never really wanted to get into that. We weren't really ever a huge Pokemon store. We kind of still aren't, to be honest. Um, and we've never really carried Yu-Gi-Oh, so that never really crossed our minds to carry as singles. And those are kind of the big three of the industry, right? And so as new card games would come out, we'd support them. We'd host events for them. Like when Lorcana first came out, we were immediately hosting release events, weekly meetups, that kind of thing. We'd do store championships and everything. But it's hard when it's a new card game and it's a really untested market to know if you should jump into it. And because we're actually, we're a big store in terms of sales and volume and velocity, but in terms of square footage, we're actually on the smaller end. Like we're only about 2,700 square feet. So that's always forced us to be extremely deliberate with our use of space. And so with all of those games in the past, it felt like to do Lorcana singles well or to do Star Wars Unlimited singles well, it would be at the expense of doing Magic well. Like we only have so much space for infrastructure, and all the space that those are taking up is being taken from Magic, which is far and away our best seller, right? And the difference with Riftbound is that the game came out, and this was honestly me. A lot of other people on the team had some hesitations when I told them that I wanted to carry Riftbound singles, because it was such a big change for us, right? It was the first time we'd ever explored seriously carrying singles that weren't Magic. And I think what really did it for me is I saw the mentality amongst players. I saw the demand that was organically appearing in the area. We were getting a lot of calls for singles, way more calls for singles than we'd ever gotten for any other game in the past. It felt like a lot more people were actually looking to deck build, to play in weekly events. Our weekly events were really well attended. Everybody else in the area was experiencing the same thing. And I think I also felt like, Riot Games is a massive company. League of Legends is a huge IP. And so out of all the games I've seen come out, I felt that the way that they positioned the game, the way that they'd release it, the way they were obviously trying to keep stock circulating, even as, as a new card game, you always run into that problem initially. It gave me a lot of optimism that out of all the games I'd seen come out, that one I felt, at least in our local area, had the most potential to actually meaningfully stick around to where it would be worth investing in that infrastructure. And so I called around to all the other stores in the area and asked them if they were doing Riftbound singles, and all of them said no. Everyone said, we're not touching it for another year or two. We don't know. It's an untested market. We're not carrying anything. And so I came to my co-owners and the team and I was like, nobody is carrying this pretty much in the state and there is a ton of demand. So let's rip some product. Let's get some things in the inventory. Let's get this going and let's actually just start selling. And worst case, if we end up hating it later, we can just shut it down and clearance it out. But at least for right now, like there's a really organic demand for Riftbound cards in this area and no one is serving it. So let's try. And so like now, obviously, like 7, 8 months later, a lot more of the stores in the area are also carrying it. They're also hosting a ton of events. It's really exploded. We have a local tournament organizer. He owns Hex Deck, which is kind of like the Scryfall equivalent for Riftbound. And so there's a lot of local infrastructure. He's doing a tournament series locally. And we just have a lot more players here where it felt like, unlike a lot of the other card games where it felt mostly like buying and selling to collectors of just those handful of high-end items. Riftbound is one of the games where people actually come to us for commons and uncommons and playable cards, and also, you know, trade us in their old decks that they're not playing anymore because they're updating to the new meta.
That's what it takes really to get a real market for a card game going. Is that the commons and uncommons have to be moving in some kind of way, right? So.
Yeah, because like everybody wants the $200 chase cards, but it's the other 99% of the cards that I want to make sure I can sell. And we don't do a lot of online sales, so for me it's really important to make sure that my local market actually wants the stock that I have, because if they don't, I don't necessarily have an exhaust vent through TCG Player or something where I'm already a known seller and I'm established, because we do probably 95% of our sales in person.
Okay, yeah, I was just going to be one of my next questions was, do you have any online presence of selling things, and if so, how do you split your time and your inventory and things like that to the online marketplace, and is that a big part of your business plan, I guess, or strategy? Sounds like you don't do a whole lot with the online. Yep.
We're getting into it. So we just switched to Shopify a couple of months ago. The whole purpose of doing that was to be able to do better with e-commerce, to be able to build out our website better, to have a lot more options for selling online, not just with card games, but with everything. And so right now we have a lot of stuff that we're still putting up on the web store, but the goal is to eventually get pretty much everything that we regularly carry in the store up on our website so that people can browse it and get a better sense of what our actual live catalog looks like. And that's true for board games, card games, everything. And so right now we're starting with just like the physical stock we have in the store. And over the next couple of months, I'm going to add all the Riftbound singles in, and we're going to use that to test kind of the online selling process and build procedures for a card game that only has, 4 sets instead of Magic, which is, 30 something years of history, right? And so rather than have to get 500,000 cards on the website, we only have to get, 5 or 10,000 cards on the website. And so our plan is this year we'll get those online. We'll still only be doing in-store pickup for now, just to kind of feel out the process. But with Shopify, the plan is to, in the next year or two, start getting into shipping, start fulfilling through our own website, offering that as an option for customers. And, I don't have any immediate plans to jump onto TCG Player or anything like that. I have a lot of very strong opinions about who that's good for and why, and like what kind of business you have to run if that's what you're looking to do. And I like to keep our team really tight. I like to compensate my team with as close to a livable wage as possible. And so it's just not really based on the way that we like to hire and run our business. It doesn't make sense to try to operate that way where we have a bunch of people just picking and packing and constantly going through cards at kind of like that minimum wage kind of grinding through inventory all the time kind of procedure. And, we're really far away from having the kind of volume where I could hire people on at a competitive wage for that kind of role. And so until that's justified, I'm not going to bring anybody on for that. And so we're just going to kind of test the waters with it. We'll feel out if we want to start selling on TCG Player or any of those other secondary marketplaces. But definitely at the very least, the goal is in the next probably year or so to get everything that we carry, including singles, up on the website, at least for in-store pickup, and then to start exploring shipping from there. And the hope would be at some point in there, we also graduate from 2,700 square feet to something that gives us a little bit more back-end space. Because right now, the reason we don't ship honestly, it's just an infrastructure issue. We just literally don't have the space to put a shipping station in the back. Like we need that for backstock. We need that for the 60 copies of Armageddon we order when 11th edition comes out for Warhammer. That we have to squeeze in our little tiny storage closet.
Well, you've got so much events going on. I'm sure you've got most of your store space is dedicated to event space and then retail space second.
It's about a 50-50 split. Yep.
And then there's just the one counter underneath which you've got all the stuff that isn't out, right?
Yeah, so we had kind of like a semi-private room in the back, and we ended up having to reclaim that during the pandemic for backstock. And so that's never going back to play space, probably. That's essentially like our little warehouse space, and it's probably only a couple hundred square feet. But we're really efficient in how we use it, and so we're getting the most out of it. But yeah, we're gonna need to either like open a warehouse space or find a larger storefront to move to be able to better cater to shipping and do it at the quality that we expect from ourselves. I can definitely be a little bit of a perfectionist, so I'm very much the type to I'm not going to jump into something if I'm going to do it half-heartedly. Like when I'm ready to get into shipping and the team's ready to get into shipping, we're going to get into shipping.
I honestly think that's probably the better way to do it rather than being aggressively sloppy.
And like we've all received the order for cards, right? Where we're going through it and we're like, man, this is maybe not the quality I was hoping for. Or like, you get the card that's damaged because it slid out of the top loader or whatever. And like little things like that where it's like I really just want to make sure that when we're shipping and when we're reaching customers that haven't physically been to our storefront, they're still getting the same quality standard that we have for ourselves locally.
Absolutely, yeah. I love that. That's definitely jives philosophically with me, right? Like I'm very much like I do only online, so I am only shipping. I've got my shipping station right here. That's too crowded right now because I've got stuff to ship still, but today. But
I've always found you a fascinating case of like almost doing everything the exact opposite way that we do it, where it's like you're fully online, we're almost fully in store, and it's like two very separate experiences of the industry, and I find that really fascinating.
I very strongly believe in the principle that there are just as many ways to run a business, well, any business, but business even in this industry, in this niche, as there are people who are running the business, and really just whatever way works best for your brain and for your mindset and is going to keep you getting up the next day and the next day to do it is the best way to do it. So I'm not beholden ever to like telling people this is the best way to do X. You have to do it this way. If you don't, you're awful. You're a loser. You're leaving money on the table. Who am I to say that? I do things different from people all the time. So, right? I don't sell. I've never had a single Riftbound card in my hands.
You're missing out. They're really pretty.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen pictures of them. They look really cool. No one's tried to sell any to me, honestly, for one. And I haven't really been buying a whole lot in the last year because I've been working through my own mountain of backlog bulk and reconfiguring all of my systems because of just the necessities of the marketplace nowadays. So um, it kind of leads me into my next main topic is what kind of tools do you wish existed that don't really currently exist in the form that would work best for your business or your brain or your operation?
Oh, this is a good one. Well, first of all, I really love what you just said about kind of like finding the way that business works best for you based on like what your own strengths are and your own preferences are. I think that's really important, especially in small business, right? It's like you're not a publicly traded company, you're not beholden to shareholders. And I think actually it's okay as a small business, especially if you're a sole proprietorship, to leave money on the table to actually still enjoy your life and what you do. I actually think that that's something that's underrated. It's just like run your business the way that feels the best to you, as long as you're still staying true to those kind of core business tenets that, make a great business and give you the quality that a customer will need from you. And so kind of in that, it's really hard with this industry with software, especially because I feel like everyone has their own way that they want things done. It's all very specialized, and our industry is extremely fiddly, which means that not only do we all have different ways we like to do it, but we also have so many components and like, a Magic inventory can be anywhere from 5,000 cards in a couple of binders to millions of cards in a warehouse where you're fulfilling hundreds of TCG player orders a day. And that scale really requires completely different tool sets. And the other thing that I found really difficult in the industry is that, the tech industry has kind of figured out how to make really excellent enterprise business to business type software. But that kind of business only works in an industry where people have a lot of money to throw around at software. And what I experience in the game industry, especially, is that most of us aren't trying to pay thousands of dollars a year for a piece of software in most cases. Like, it has to really do everything. Like, maybe you're paying that much for your point of sale system. Because otherwise, like, we're still a fairly small industry. Even the biggest stores, I would say, comparable to a lot of other industries, are actually pretty small still. And that kind of scale, I think, doesn't justify the really big tech companies or the VC companies to look into this industry to build that kind of software. And so I think that's where I experienced the biggest pain point is like, I have a history in software a little bit. I used to work in user experience design, especially in like website development and stuff like that. And the thing that drives me absolutely crazy about this industry is the lack of quality in websites. Like, distributor websites are terrible, they're slow, they're hard to browse, they don't work very well, the search algorithms make it really hard to find the products you're looking for. You have companies like Games Workshop that are massive, but you can't even order online still, like you have to submit through your sales rep. So when I'm building or my team's building an order through Games Workshop, like I can't even see what inventory they have. So I'm going to ship them an $8,000 order and they're going to tell me a week later after holding my money, great, you can have $3,000 of it. And I can't anticipate what that's going to be. I can't build my ordering in as careful as we are to like perfectly anticipate what's going to fall out of stock. So we end up with stock gaps and stuff like that I'd love to avoid. And I think that's like the biggest pitfall in the industry is that there's just not a lot of really well designed, intentional, competent tool sets that, whether on the distribution and ordering end or on the inventory management end, really thrive in this industry. Like, we just switched to Shopify. They're a huge company, obviously. They have a whole app marketplace for things, so you can kind of pick and choose the features that you want, right? And yet, even despite that, there are entire use cases for our business that I cannot find an app that's designed to do in the entirety of the Shopify marketplace. Like, even something like managing special orders and linking those to purchase orders so that when we receive product, we know to hold that product aside for a customer. Surprisingly, that's a thing that's tough to do inside of Shopify. Yeah, you would think like, oh, this is a really simple use case. This tool should just exist. And in a lot of cases, it just doesn't. And, a lot of the inventory management or purchase order management tools aren't designed for, purchase orders from hundreds of different locations with hundreds of different products, much less, managing card singles or anything like that. And so what I have been really happy to see is more card game oriented software, Store Pass, Sort Swift, Shadow POS, that type of stuff coming out of the industry, which is people trying to build tools that are specialized for us. And in some cases are really pretty solid. And I think I'm just really hopeful to see that continue to develop and for, as our industry grows, for us to be taken a little bit more seriously on the software side to where distributors and other companies in the industry really finally have an incentive to actually upgrade their infrastructure so that it feels like our industry is in 2026 instead of feeling sometimes like we're still in the early 2000s.
Yeah, right. I was just gonna say a lot of it feels like 2003 still, right? Um, yeah. Yeah, I found too. Like even just doing online, like I have a website that I would love to put singles on in a any kind of like sustainable and scalable way, but I can't really afford to bootstrap myself up to even just doing. I built the website through WordPress. It's not Shopify, and so
That's what we were on previously.
it's hard to justify converting just to end up spending a bunch of money to make it work.
No, I definitely feel that.
And I primarily am selling lower end cards anyway. So it's a whole lot of cards that would have to sell every month to justify the inventory level subscription for that kind of thing.
No, for
And
sure. I mean, it's hundreds of dollars a month at the minimum. I definitely
yeah,
get
and
it.
it's just that's quite a bit. And yeah, so a lot of the inventory management stuff that exists out there that hasn't been built from within the industry is like that, where it's like you can manage up to 50 SKUs on your website for only $20. And I'm like, 50 SKUs? That's like half the commons in a set.
I know. When I'm browsing other people's Shopify websites in other industries, I'm so envious where they have like this beautifully curated 200, 300 product catalog and everything is obviously really intentionally designed. And I'm like, man, that looks great, except I have 12,000 products to do this for. Like, there's no way I'm going to hand photograph every single one. Yeah, exactly. So I definitely, it's a struggle with the industry. It's a struggle with just the variety of cards and pieces that we deal with. And it's tough. Like there's not necessarily a great solution. Like, and like you said, like at different scales, it's so hard to find something that where the cost justifies the amount of tooling and support you're actually getting.
And then also like we said, every business runs things differently too. So like um there's different things popping up, but they're dedicated only for specific things. Like Manapool seems like a really good marketplace, but it's not really good for me because I'm not only selling Magic, I'm also selling Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and Flesh and Blood and Vice Shores and baseball cards and soccer stickers on these Coke bottle labels back here. Uh,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's hard to find one marketplace where you can do most of that.
right, and then the tooling too. Like so,
Well, every marketplace has its own back end and none of them work nicely with each other.
and then the ones that like the software pieces that are coming up, like Card Uploader or things like that. Again, they're only working on a piece of the industry at a time, and they promise inventory management, but I can't manage my Barry Bonds cards with Card Uploader because it doesn't even know what that is.
Yeah, and that's what's really hard is it's like the tools that I see coming up are really amazing, especially considered that they tend to be developed by a team of like 3 people or less. And so I'm really impressed with them from that perspective, but it's also hard because if you have a team of 3 people or less, the scope that you can address is so much smaller than even if you have 10 developers, right? Like it's orders of magnitude less that you can focus on. And so you have to be really specialized. You have to be like, we're only doing Magic singles, or, we're doing Magic in this other game, but we haven't dipped into this thing yet. And you kind of have to piecemeal everything together because each company really only has the resources to do one or two things well. Whereas, when you end up in other industries where they have like a team of 1,000 engineers, it's like, yeah, they're throwing out features every single day for a variety of different things. And our industry just isn't quite at the scale yet, I don't think, where we have that. Like, I'm lucky because I have a background in website development and user experience design to where like I am used to working in software tools. I can build some things custom for myself if I need to. I don't mind digging into my Shopify theme code and stuff like that if I need to make adjustments and kind of like fine tune everything. But that's not a skill set that everybody in the industry has or should be expected to have.
I'm not super comfortable with that myself.
Yeah, and you shouldn't be. I mean, it's intimidating.
I've done a lot with spreadsheets and stuff, so I have this massive Byzantine network of spreadsheets that all talk to each other to do my inventory management. That
And I would get lost in that immediately.
so I because there's nothing out there that really works for me. I'm fifth back in the back of my head is turn that into some type of app someday, but it's like you said, I'm going to be doing that and I'm going to make it the way it would work for me, but I may have a hard time adding on the pieces that would be more generally useful. And that's what I'm seeing a lot of these other things that are popping up are doing too. Like they're really focused in on like TCG tracking is great for envelope tracking and stuff like that, but they've tacked on this inventory management thing and it doesn't really work exactly right for me. It looks great for a lot of people, but it doesn't really work great for me. And I'm sure if I tried to make my inventory system that I've designed to be relatively flexible so that I can ingest any kind of inventory, but I tacked on a shipping implementation to it, it probably wouldn't be great. Right?
Yeah, I definitely get that. And that's something that we're dealing with, yeah, with Shopify is, there's moments where we're realizing, okay, we're not going to find a tool that does this the way that we want to do this. So we're actually probably going to have to change our approach to how we do this to meet where the tools are at, which is not how I love to build procedures. But, when it comes to factors in the industry like this, it's like I'd rather have a tool that we can learn to work around that does its job than try to force a tool to do something it's not designed to do and create a bunch of problems. And so I think my dream for the industry long term would be that we just see a lot more specialized tooling that's industry specific that can support all of us at our different sizes and scales to be able to run our businesses a little bit more efficiently than we currently
Without
can.
being super pricey, right?
Yeah, without being, like a $10,000 annual subscription.
It's kind of run out of most of what I had to talk about. Do you have any like final thoughts, final advice for someone who may be running a store, may want to grow or add on TCGs as from an operations standpoint or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I have a couple of different thoughts. One is, it's kind of cliche, but don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Like, it's okay to jump into something at first and learn as you go and as you scale. Your operations are never going to be perfect from the start. Start small, start implementing it, see how it goes, get real customer feedback from your actual community. Because no matter how you anticipate something to work, what your customers actually want and how they end up interfacing with it is almost always going to be different than how you pictured it in your head. And the best thing that we've done for our store and the best thing that I've seen other stores do is just try it out. Bring in 1,000 Riftbound singles and see if anybody cares. And then if they don't, dump them. Try something else. Same with Warhammer, same with Age of Sigmar, same with board games, same with collectibles, anything. Like, if there's something that you're starting to get asked about that you're seeing an organic interest in your area, like especially if that's something like card games or something like that, it's okay to try something and change your mind later. And I think it's better to have tried something and found all the ways that it doesn't work for you and cancel it later than to have never tried it, because at least then you have extra data and you have more feedback about what didn't work that you can learn from in the future. And I think that constantly innovating and trying new things is how we keep our businesses fresh and honestly how we keep ourselves from getting bored. And I think both of those things are really important in running a successful business. Is you have to be engaged and excited about what you're doing, and you have to be finding new features that you can offer your community. Um, and then the other side of that is, recognize your own constraints, which is that if you are one person or you're a small team, you don't need to try to become the biggest TCG player seller overnight or something like that. It's okay to scale up organically with the resources you have. And generally, I've found a lot more success with working within your means or at the edge of your means to grow naturally and at a pace that you can sustain than overextending yourself because you have a goal that's maybe a little bit too big for where you're at currently. And then you get yourself in hot water because you're realizing that you're overspending or you're going negative or you're running into infrastructural issues that you just don't have the resources to fix. So I realize those two sets of advice are kind of like at odds with each other a little bit, where on one side I'm like, try new things, break things, let it be chaos. And on the other side I'm like, but be careful. But I think if you find the middle ground in there, you can really build a sustainable business for a long time by just being mindful of yourself and your resources, but also noticing the moments where you have the opportunity to try something new and dip into a new market. And don't be afraid to do it. I mean, it's your business. Have fun with it.
Yeah, there's a difference between just like doing something randomly, throwing spaghetti at the wall to see if it sticks, and doing something intentionally, right? And with the operational setup to be able to look at it and see, did this actually work? Do we want to continue with it, or do we want to go with our predetermined exit plan that we had because we're smart enough not to just dive into it? So I definitely have dived into things more than I should have in the past.
I think we all have, right? I'm giving this advice from experience of having done that before, where I bite off more than I can chew, and I have to try to backpedal out of it.
500,000 flesh and blood commons and uncommons ended up at my house a few years ago. So
Yeah, we also ended up with quite a stock of flesh and blood. Yeah, and like you're gonna make mistakes, just make sure that you can afford to make the mistakes that you're making because they are a good opportunity to learn from as long as you don't let them sink you.
that's great. Yeah, make sure you can afford to make your mistakes.
Yeah, place if you want to place $100,000 Hobbit order, do it, but only if you can afford to spend $100,000 on the Hobbit. If you don't have that capital to spend on one set in case it flops, maybe you shouldn't be extending quite that hard.
That's great. That's a good spot to end on, I think. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, Jason. Total Estate Games, check out their website. Check them out in Broomfield, Colorado. Is there anything else you wanted to say real quick?
That pretty much wraps it up. Like, we're here 7 days a week. We love meeting new people. If anybody ever has any questions or wants to chat with me, I try to be pretty available for anybody in the industry. I love to answer questions. I love to talk by email, send me a DM, whatever you prefer. And then my little last shout out that's very important to me is that I'm a member of the Sustainability Subcommittee in GAMA, which is the tabletop game organization. And so I've been really trying to encourage everybody in the industry to kind of look at how you're running your business, try to be a little bit more sustainable. We actually just got accepted to the Colorado Green Business Network as one of their newer members. So we still have a lot of work to do, but they're recognizing our sustainability efforts. And I think that one of the best things that you can do for yourself and your local environment, your local community, is to, be a little bit mindful about the waste that you're creating and do what you can to minimize your own footprint where possible. And join the committee. If you're a GAMA member, join the committee.
Join the committee? How do we do that? I could ask you about that later, but yeah.
Yeah, you can ask me about it. The GAMA website has resources on it as well. And then at GAMA Expo every year, we do a committee open house where Julie, the head of the committee, will be there. She's happy to onboard new members, chat with people. Julie is also delightful, super smart, and a great resource if you're looking to add anything sustainable to your business.
Awesome. Thanks for that so much. If listeners, viewers, if you have any questions, leave comments. Share this with everybody who you think might be interested in all that and all the other, things that we're supposed to say at this point. Thanks so much for listening in. Yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.